why I think we should never call somebody a narcissist, but instead have a different term, at least in our own mind. And why, then should you also not use a term like, oh, you're lying? Those two words to me in particular are very noxious to hear, along with other things like you're lazy, or you're a bum, or you're an alcoholic. Now, I believe the phrase heard before that so-and-so uses what they got, or you should use what you got. In my mind, at present, that means all too often, if we have one person calls it, the genetic lottery in terms of beauty. Now, this might be, quote, used. Or if you are a strapping person of mesomorphic build with strong muscles and great symmetry in terms of your body also, you might call it the ubiquitous football player look. So some might say use that. Others will say that if you are highly gifted intellectually, in the conventional sense, maybe with knowledge, special insights, or your vocabulary set, often perhaps more delineated and very respectful compared to many, that you should use that too. Others might say you should use your family connections, or use what you inherited, or where you went to school, particularly if it's a college or graduate school, and the degrees you might get from there. Some even saying that if you went to a private high school of sorts, that's quite well known for whatever reasons, that you'd use that also. Or I alluded to connections. Maybe your father has a certain name in the public sphere. Or maybe you're a, quote, trust fund recipient, sometimes referred to as a trust fund baby. Maybe you grew up in an environment too where it was modeled to you how to do more than not smile, shall we say. Or maybe it was modeled to you never to smile. You might be wanting to use either of these. Or maybe you were brought up in a certain religious viewpoint and you want to use that in turn. The upshot of it being we all perhaps want to use certain gifts, as some would call them, to our advantage. What advantage would that be? Some would say power. There being a philosopher, for instance, who wrote on the term will to power. I can't remember quite who had said that. So I see a twofold process here, perhaps. We would all like to feel powerful in terms of overcoming certain threats against us, to our physique, our very physicality and survival that way, or our self-esteem under threat, or our finances, or even as to where we're going to live someday, or such. Even defending our reputation. And I'd say, too, some of these things can definitely be apparently advantageous. And yet, an additional factor, I believe, is simply the thinking it to be advantageous, in that it makes us feel superior to others in our heads. And the very act of thinking ourselves superior to many others in terms of some kind of power, some kind of advantage, are merely thinking this, whether it's true or to what extent or not even, giving us a sense of safety, at least oftentimes. But I love a couple concepts I've heard before on YouTube or other. Einzelganger has a channel, and I've communicated before with him personally. He says the reason he has his fabulous channel is because he's ugly. He says he's very short, and he considers thus that this held him back from dating, ironically, and that he had much more time then to plow into various things such as personal growth and the channel itself and build that. Amongst other things, he living in the Netherlands, going to graduate school in religion and whatever else also. Others have found a physical handicap of a, ironically, more conventional sort, such as blindness or loss of a limb or being in a wheelchair in general, to be advantageous in the long run also. Even Dr. Martha Beck, who wrote several great books, as a sociologist, Harvard graduate, was told in graduate school when she was pregnant that she was going to deliver a baby that had Down syndrome. And 5 doctors urged her not to deliver the baby but have an abortion. She decided to have the baby anyway on principle and more, and considered later this to be the best decision she ever made in her life. And so who's to say, even, what things we consider a plus or a minus actually are in the long term? Hence the phrase silver linings. And you might say, too, that if your house burnt to the ground, you might take the insurance money that might be quite more than what you ever paid for the home and build a palace upon the grounds that were once rubble after the fire. Same for an earthquake, for that matter. And in general, I would say no pain, no gain, and that life can throw us a lot of curveballs that cause us to question what we otherwise wouldn't, ponder, grow, clarify. Thus, I love Brian Tracy's talk, The 7 C's of Success, in which he says the number one key principle in life, in his opinion, is clarity. What prompts clarity more than adversity is my shtick here. These are my thoughts then on this. And again, while we should never call someone a narcissist, but instead someone who's touting what they claim they have to their advantage, whether true or not, or to what extent. And why, in general, maybe even advantages aren't such great advantages in the long run. I was once, for instance, engaged to a woman who had had cancer at age 15 and lost much of her vision as a result, brain cancer. And this was a great advantage to her in many respects. It caused her to question a lot of conventionalities about life and grow a lot in general. And that was in many ways then an advantage for her. And it built fortitude too, if you will, courage. Now, not everybody can handle those advantages, and they jump off the bridge, so to speak, or as some people of some degree of wealth in the Depression era did when they heard their stocks crashed, literally jumped out windows. But some used it as a springboard to question a variety of things.